It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And this is going to be a Smart Hulk Feedback Friday because I am going to take the emotional content of some comments instead of what people actually said, because what people actually said was counterfactual. But there's no point in arguing facts when it's about feelings. One of the big problems with the internet these days is that, it's the facts don't care about your feels. But the true, psychological first principle is that you can't reason with feelings with facts. You have to talk feelings with feelings. And that makes a lot of people in nerd spaces uncomfortable because any way I finish that sentence is a live wire, so I'm not going to do it. Hello, Scout. So here we go. I'm going to do my best here. It's going to be judged, but I know I'm doing this in the spirit of goodwill. I know I have the best of intentions, and all the nasty grams that people fling at me and all the conspiracy theories and all the projection doesn't change that. So help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Leanna Cares has really been jumping lately, and the next expansion is opening up to group. We're calling them bubbles. More on that in the coming weeks. We got to figure out sign up forms and stuff like that, but I'm really looking forward to it because I do think creating small conversations where people can talk without these economies of scale reaching a tipping point where we can get more nuance in the conversation, it's going to be great. So onward. I'm going to start with a comment from Wellness Wednesday about mentorship because it actually kind of frames everything at a point I hit this week. And I had to walk myself back from it. Because I admit some of the shitty things some people said about me felt profoundly unfair. And like I said, we're counterfactual, and I had to take a breath and take a moment. And having to check myself like this over and over and over again really informs my perspective on what creators that make a lot more money than I do go through. Because the truth is, and I know this, I would make a lot more money if I behaved in the ways that you guys don't like. And that's just fact. I do things because it's the right thing to do, not because it's financially advantageous. Because social media algorithms benefit those who are willing to milk drama and enrage people. And back where I came from, the phrase used to say, don't hate the player, hate the game. And you guys are hating the player instead of the game. So it is in the spirit of mentorship and letting others learn from my mistakes, I offer this caveat. You can't help those who don't want to be helped. You can show all the interest and concern in the world to someone doing all the wrong possible. But once they give you the thanks but no thanks, then you'll have to switch from mentor mode to I don't give a fuck mode before you hurt yourself. And that's the point I hit. There's this thing I've been hearing again and again and again of why can't they separate legitimate criticism from the trolls? Because people can't. Because when you're bombarded with nasty grams, you're emotionally compromised and it becomes this haze. And it took a lot of spoons for me to sort through all the accusations in the comments this week to find some gems. And it felt really stupid because it felt like I should, and I'm just being honest here. It felt like I'm not rewarded for doing the things people say they want people to do. In fact, I feel actively punished for continuing to come back for another beating. And why don't people do it? Because I've seen what happens when people do it. It ain't pretty and it ain't profitable. And yeah, the smart thing to do is go into I don't give a fuck mode and milk the drama and get those clicks, because all a lot of advertisers care about is traffic. They don't care about the quality of engagement. I mean, shit, look at how long it took sponsors to drop Kanye West. You know, in order to create, and I just say this in the spirit for the people who actually care and are listening. And that's the problem with YouTube videos, is you have to do mentor mode and I don't give a fuck mode at the same time. So this is mentor mode, okay? And this is the problem, because you have to worry about both groups at the same time. You constantly get misconstrued. In order to have something work, in order for people to listen to you, there has to be a reward structure. There is no reward structure in playing nice here on these things. There is a ton of reward structure in being antagonistic, and because it's a triangulation, right? It's you hate who I hate, therefore I like you. I don't do that. It makes me sick, okay? I don't even hate TERFs. I make fun of them. I don't hate them. I mock them a lot. But if people are wondering why I do that, I am sickened by people who are disingenuous about trauma and fear. And so I ideologically oppose the pearl clutching anti-trans movement, because that's what it is. It's performative. It doesn't make any sense. If they were really so afraid, they wouldn't be. Because I know I've been afraid. I'm afraid to talk about this stuff. I know I'm going to, if I say one thing even remotely wrong, I get bombarded with hate and I have to hurt all over again. And I've been getting it from people who I consider friends, and that stung. And I told them it stung, and they just kept going, and She-Hulk derangement syndrome is real. Okay? But I'm continuing because I do care. And I'm starting to feel really stupid for caring. Just said that for the record. So, yeah. This is the problem I got into with Gamergate as well. I do believe in reaching across the aisle, and I do believe in having conversations with people with whom I disagree. And the thing that's frustrating is it's Gamergate all over again. It's nobody's listening to us. Well, I'm listening to you. You're not important. Gee, I wonder why nobody's listening to you, right? Because what happens in the media is people watch. Nobody wants to be the first. Everybody wants to be the second. So if they see somebody go out there, try to reach across the aisle, get covered in shit, they don't do it. There's no reward. There's no money in it. That's the driver of everything. Money. Period. End of story. Simple. That's it. Money. You know? Why did it seem like the very liberal SJW groups were getting ahead in 2012 via, well, it started turning when Trump got elected. Money. They thought there was money in it. They were wrong. I was saying they were wrong. A lot of video game companies threw a lot of money at various organizations thinking they could buy goodwill, and they couldn't. Of course, did they ever send any of that money my way? No, because I'm too polarizing, right? But I truly believe that standing up for what is right and being honest, even when you get the shit kicked out of you, is in the long term the right way to go. And I say that because if nobody does it, then no one's doing it. If I want other people to behave with honor, I have to behave with honor, which means standing my ground, saying what I believe, getting the shit kicked out of me, not retaliating because I can't, and talking about it. It's not fun. I feel beat up right now. It's not fun to feel beat up, and I'm not saying this for sympathy. I don't expect anyone to fucking care. But it is real. It is really real. And again, this is just perspective, right? This is just for what it's worth. To be going through some really painful health shit. To have, you know, if you saw Twitch and saw the little sort of memorial we did for a regular that passed away this week, all this is going on, and people who knew, and people that claimed to be my friend, were losing their shit over She-Hulk. Now, something really real is happening there. But things were also really real for me, and those people had a choice of what they were going to prioritize. And they prioritized Green Lady Lawyer Show. And at that point, it's not about the show. At that point, it's, well, this thing with this person was not what I thought it was. Because I've had conversations with people about the show, and, you know, it's been fun. You know, even people who didn't love it terribly. I mean, you guys know the most unpopular video I've ever done on YouTube was when I said Tony Stark committed a war crime at the end of Endgame. And people got super mad at me, but I made a really, really good friend out of that. And that's doing it right. I met somebody really fantastic through that who totally disagreed with me. And she knows so fucking much about the MCU, and I love her to death. But that's how I met somebody I just adore. So it's funny how you meet people, right? And you have to be prepared to be seen, even when it's unpopular, to form those connections with people. But yeah, and to me, that's happy math, right? To me, okay, 10,000 people hated me, but I made one really great friend. I can live with that. That's good. But that, I mean, I say this just because this is my framing on the whole thing. And like I said, you can't fight feelings with facts. You have to engage with feelings. And so let's get to another comment on that. Again, feeling about bad writing, the two women talking. Bad writing has become one of those popularized phrases that should have a more specific meaning than it does. It usually stands for, I don't like something about this piece of media, and I think it's the writer's fault. But if pressed on specific things, the one leveling that criticism usually speaks to the premises and themes of a work rather than the writing itself. Even things like this character is boring or this writer is leaning too heavily on cliche aren't truly criticism of the writing so much as the premises. That's why we get some baffling phrases like using cliches is bad writing, but you can do cliches if you do them well. Or if a main character is boring, that means they're poorly written, but you can write a boring character well, which would be oxymorons if they weren't simply working from bad assumptions. Good writing conveys things with sense to the reader, viewer using words, and bad writing fails to convey things with sense because the words are being used poorly. Finnegan's Wake is bad writing on an interesting premise, so academics love it for being easy to BS with. Overhyped garbage, fight me. And that, I respect a big swing like that. I love that. We don't have time to get into Finnegan's Wake. I would love to get into Finnegan's Wake. Maybe we'll do a bubble chat about Finnegan's Wake or something like that. But I appreciate the flex there, commenter. But Yeah, that's a poorly understood thing about TV, film, video games, especially. And I think that's the reason I get frustrated with the it's bad writing thing, because as somebody who's done both, no, as no, I hate that as a woman, as a writer. No, no, no. I've done narrative design for games. Um, I've done writing for games. Narrative design is not writing. General game design is not writing. By the time a writer comes in, the major beats of the story, levels, and characters are usually all set. If you are lucky, you get to put muscle on the bones. Sometimes you're just adding skin. That's the gig. Even TV writing, I mean, especially with something like Star Wars now, or, you can't say that because the TV shows are, I think, more centralized than the movies. I think the reason the sequel films were not great is they didn't plot all three. I talk about that all the time, so I'll spare you again. But a writer for an MCU project, for instance, often comes in, they're told you have to use these characters and this is the setting and you need to do this beat, this beat, this beat, this beat, and we need, I'll hold that thought. And this has to be the ending because we have to hit this. It's more craft than art. And I think so many people come at the idea of writing from old school novels where you just wrote your passion and then you tried to get it published. It's not even that anymore. Even prose fiction is so factory. There's certain things they want. You have to hit trends. So there's some lack of understanding, and the challenge I get into is I ask other people in the industry, what do you want people to know? And they say, we want people to understand the process better. And so I go and I communicate that process, and I just have people who have never worked in the industry say, no, you're wrong. Here's a subreddit. Mentor mode to I don't give a fuck mode, right? And on that case, I have had some very interesting critical conversations with people who were critical, especially about the She-Hulk finale. And okay, if you can talk about the finale, watch the whole thing. You have met my conditions for talking about the whole thing instead of just the marketing. I see the criticisms with the finale. I share some of them. That if you're going to have a female character subjected to revenge porn, as somebody who has had a version of that, I don't call it revenge porn, but people dug up some of my old pinup and calendar modeling to say she's not dumb because she's dumb because she's a slut, right? You get your tits out for a living. I'm a journalist. Don't tell me how to do my job. I won't tell you how to do yours, right? That kind of stuff. It's bullshit. And we live in a world where Chris Evans can accidentally post a picture of his dick on Twitter and it's just kind of funny, but women are supposed to be ashamed. I don't agree with the paradigm. I don't agree with the rules. We have to follow them. But you go there. That is seen as one of the worst things that can happen to a woman. And you punt it. You say nothing about it. You just break the fourth wall and jump into a deconstruction of shitty Disney endings. People are going to have an issue with that. And there's a situation where I totally agree it was a punt. it did feel like they really didn't know how to resolve that problem, because the harsh reality is, and perhaps this is sort of subliminal commentary on it, there's really no way to do anything about it if somebody decides to violate you that way. And that's what's so chilling about it. You have to eat the shit, know people have seen it, deal with it, try to keep your head up, cry in private. It's a horrible thing to do to a character and then bunt. The other side of me says, okay, they're on the one hand spoofing the fact that the only way these superhero properties seem to know how to make a woman interesting is horribly traumatize her, and then go into an entire deconstruction of shitty Disney endings. Now that's a big swing. I don't know how to feel about it, because I see the cons, I see the pros. To me, that is gutsy, and I appreciate that. To somebody else, it's just not going to work, and that is also fair. But I like to reward risk. It's the same way I stuck with the Assassin's Creed franchise every time they have broken their formula to try to innovate. It never works on the first go, but I reward that. I actually haven't played Valhalla just because they went too many games, and I know it's only 3, but for me, they went too many games without something of a refresh in formula. And people can disagree with me. That's just my opinion, subjective opinion, right? I'm talking about what I like, not what's good or bad. I think Ubisoft does open world games very, very well. There's just open world game fatigue, right? Take of that what you will. I like this comment because it made me happy. The main thing I've taken away as a theme from these two women talking videos is that I'm not crazy for liking the first Thor movie and thinking it really worked, right from when I first saw it as a teenager. Half jokes aside, this is quite insightful, as these episodes tend to be. And that's one of the reasons for doing it is, yeah. People tend to throw certain statistics at things about whether something was successful or not, and people tend to forget that the first Captain America movie was only a modest success. First Thor movie was only a modest success. Remember how bad Iron Man 2 was? Iron Man 3 was worse, but the original Iron Man, the original Captain America, the original Thor, they were all building to the Avengers films. And so they were really solid foundations that people didn't quite appreciate at the time. I maintain that these Disney Plus series are the same. They're not perfect. They have limited budgets. Same as the first Thor movie. The first Thor movie was not a terribly expensive movie. It's really easy to look back on those early films with rose-colored glasses. But I remember people being... I couldn't understand it because I love Steve McQueen movies, so I don't know how anybody didn't like that first Captain America movie. It was amazing. But, whatever. But okay, moving on. Moving on to the video everybody got mad at me for. Well, not everybody. But you know what I mean? I'm hyperbole for effect. I do hyperbole for effect, guys. It is not attacking anyone. It is me making a joke. Please stop saying I'm attacking you. I'm not attacking anybody. I have a rough sense of humor. It's how I talk to myself. It's how I talk to my friends. It's just me. It's not an attack. This was a positive comment. And it was, like I said, it was tough to find the positive comments. But overall, I appreciated your advice. When a woman is talking frankly about a female perspective for the benefit of men's understanding, I give that extra weight. I picked this comment because somebody understands what I was doing, and I'm not even a typical woman. I'm just translating. To touch on something you said about marriage being a one-way trip back in the day, that isn't the case anymore, yet that hasn't made women more likely to marry. Pregnancy and STDs are easier to avoid, but for most of us, that hasn't made casual sex particularly common at all. With divorce and alimony laws being what they are in many places, I can see where things have improved for women over the decades, but I'm struggling to see where things have improved for men that want to date them in the last 50 years, aside from occasionally a terminated pregnancy that he didn't want either. Like I said, I am rough. That was blunt. I appreciate that. Do you see how they're like, how I selected this comment, even though it was like boom at the end, because I'm like, okay, somebody understands what I'm doing. I can engage with this, even though it's kind of bare knuckled at the end. And this is the thing about the video. I wasn't saying things have improved for men. It was strictly refuting the argument that it's harder to date because of money. It's right in the title. It's where it started. And I can only go so far going, okay, where did the miscommunication happen before I hit that? I don't give a fuck. It's not what I said. And I am really, really becoming, gotta set much more boundaries on that. And again, because of this thing, I went back and I read the Variety article that everybody freaked out. She's insulting the fans. Tatiana Maslany's comments about them joking about troll comments that echoed what they were doing on the show. She said trolls, not the fans. You cannot blame a show for not distinguishing between trolls and fans if you are taking the word troll and turning it into fans. But again, this is not about facts. This is not about logic. This is about emotions. And because of that, I have to avoid being as emotionally compromised as I have been reading these comments. Again, going through all the nasty grams, I feel real beat up right now. And that's me being honest. So I can't answer how things have improved for men because it was outside the scope of that video. I'd have to think about it. All I said is it's not because of money. I think people meeting people is harder these days, but that's again outside the scope. One person said, learning about this stuff on social media can give you all the wrong lessons. If you don't temper it with offline experience, it's easy to become bitter just based on the experiences of the most bitter people online. It's true, platonic interactions are important and not discussed nearly as much, so it's easy to undervalue them. For some people, this is a necessary step to learning more about romantic possibility. No, there's nothing wrong with wanting romantic love, just as much, just throwing that out there. One more thing. It's clear the discussion around She-Hulk and similar media has affected this channel and audience. Would it not be a good use of time to make that stuff into a separate video, even more than one video if there's enough content for that? I am interspersing my thoughts because if I do hey, here's a video about She-Hulk, it's going to get hate bombed even worse than interstitials about it. If you guys want it, I'll do it. But it would get me mad traffic and bring a whole bunch of trolls to the comments. It would shit up the place. And I just don't think that's a good experience. But I'm prepared to be wrong. And if this is something people want, I'll do it. Okay. Another one. I respectfully disagree on this one, not for the fact women are independent. They just overall seem to have zero ability to distinct, hey, this person did this to me, to men did this to me. You notice they said they're generalizing women about men. Just sticking a pin in that. I will continue. I'm sorry, I haven't done anything to you. It just astonishes me that if I made a statement, black people steal, I'm black, I'd be called a bigot. If I said Italians are criminals or Hispanics are lazy or any definitive statement like that, I'd get roasted. But today men are like one of, if not the only group you can generalize. I apologize if half the men you've dated or associated with were assholes. I've never met you. And I resent the notion that because Kyle or Tyler or Rob, good names, mistreated you, I therefore have to share responsibility for that. I'm so ecstatic I finally settled down with the best person I've ever met because dating these days is like hopscotching through a minefield. this is something I've noticed a lot. People don't like being generalized about, but they generalize about other people. And it's a common shorthand that Chris Rock dealt with in his stand-up back in the day. And I will give the commenter credit. He didn't say all women. He said they just overall. And obviously he doesn't believe that. Well, okay, they didn't actually say, he didn't actually say he's married to a woman, but, you know, he's talking about women. So forgive the assumption if I'm wrong. See, I'll do nuance there instead of jumping only on the fact that you just generalized about women generalizing. Because the core of it is true that there is it's tough, right? Because we exist in a zeitgeist. We live in a society. And there has sort of been, and everybody's getting it. That's the thing. Generalizations. Trans people are getting it. Gay people are getting it. God, the biphobia is everywhere. I'm a chaser for being pansexual, you know, like, and I have to let that go because there's no point in fighting it. But I don't like the liberal use of that term. I find it dehumanizing. Not that it isn't a real thing. It's just overused. I have been very aware of the really, I'll spare you, okay? But everybody's getting it. It is just completely understandable that the ones that hang there are the ones that affect you the most. And there are a lot of stereotypes about Black people that still get going. I'm freaking shocked at some of the stuff. And everybody's in a different echo chamber, right? So some people hear things, some people don't. Individual results may vary. In the US, Roe versus Wade got repealed. That's a pretty serious attack, predominantly against women. So again, it's not factual that men are the only group you can lash out at. Trans people are getting it. Gay people are getting it. Like I said, there's still a lot of anti-Black racism. Hispanics are getting called Latinx, even though they don't like it. It's everybody. It's everybody getting hit. I mean, I'm Jewish. Oh my God, anti-Semitism. But that doesn't mean the feeling isn't real. And I think we should all watch the generalizations. We're all going to slip. It's just something to keep more in mind. If we keep it more in mind, everybody will feel like the pressure's taken off them a little bit. But that means everybody. You can't go whole hog about generalizations about other groups of people and then expect to get treated better. So I really do think the solution to this is for everybody to engage in more self-awareness. So again, you model the behavior you want from other people. This you first thinking is not working. It's not. Everybody has to be a little uncomfortable, so no one is very uncomfortable. That's the only way through. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate the candor. Last one. I think it's ridiculous and disingenuous for both the right and the left to insinuate that a bygone era was some sort of golden age for men. The 50s did not give birth to the 5-martini lunch because happiness and good adjustment prevailed among the male of the species. There was intergenerational trauma from wars, etc. And while the stigma against divorce was worse for women, it was not non-existent for men. No doubt men also found themselves stuck in bad or even abusive marriages, and in the 50s, that was never treated as anything more than a joke. At best, a bad wife could stall a man's career. Many employers at the time really felt that a man who had a disordered home life wasn't fit for promotion. The whole hard to get thing was just as much a signal for men as a man's response to it was for women. The thinking was a woman who is hard to get is a woman who has virtue and self-control, which means she will be good wife material. And since the woman's role was so curtailed back in the day, hard to get was one of the few ways to demonstrate character. And it could be very misleading, as most of the shorthand methods for judging people for desirability. And that's what I was basically trying to say, that this idea that the 1950s was a halcyon bygone era for men, it wasn't a golden age. It wasn't. It was an era where men came back from war and they all had, a lot of them had PTSD. It was also a time where white men qualified for the GI Bill and nobody else did. So that 1950s era that's so glamorized, only a minority of the population got that. And again, it was a high wire act. And I don't get why, and I do want to get and I don't want to get at the same time. I'm not interested in being bellowed at about this. I'm not interested in being insulted about this. That's just a fact that this perfect era for men did not exist. It was hard living back then, hence the 5 martini lunch, right? Maybe not lunch, maybe it was dinner, but still. And I really think it's important to keep that in mind when people are looking at, sorry about the notifications going off. People are looking at and judging how difficult it is today. Because it's different hard. And because it's different hard, it's really hard to compare whether it's easier or harder. And part of me just is like, holy crap, show some damn respect for what people went through going to war. Because if you're hand waving away the impacts of combat trauma, how am I supposed to take you seriously when you're really upset about a TV show? I'm not asking you to answer that. That was a rhetorical question that I ask you to just consider, because it's a fair question. If you think life was so great for these guys coming back from the front, if you think that was easy in the high life, but it's not about that, right? It's not. That is the words are not what's actually being said. And what I want is I want to drill down to the core emotions. And what I find so frustrating about this whole thing is people, I'm listening. And what I'm getting is attacks and conspiracy theories and accusations that I'm dog whistling. And I'm not. And it's weird because, anyway, I'll spare that one. But when someone is saying, I want to know what you're feeling, and you fling accusations at them, that is a missed opportunity. And that is not that person's responsibility. That is your responsibility. Now, the people walking around wounded, I understand, have difficulty taking up that responsibility. But that doesn't change the fact that you feel a lot more centered if you actually control the things you can control and don't worry about the things that you can't control. TV trends shift. I'm a child of the 90s. Like, In Living Color and Married with Children would never get made today. And people are like, oh my God, you're so hung up on these things. No, I'm just using commonly known examples. That's it. A lot of the shit I read and watch, you want me to quote French hip hop? or dance hall reggae. Those things are going to land like lead balloons. I use examples that people know. That's it. There's no deeper thing than that. If you read things in that's not there, then it's just throwing the ball back and forth of you got me wrong, but you got me wrong, but you got me wrong, but this isn't true, but what you said about me wasn't true. It's a race to the bottom, right? It's a race to the bottom. I can't do anything about your side of that. I can only do something about my side of that. And what I'm offering to the table is, well done, guys. You beat the shit out of me this week emotionally, collectively. I am not responding in kind. Fucking honor. Not everybody. I know the comments selected, cool. But I am admitting, I can fight her turfs till the cows come home. I don't give a shit. But for every one comment I read I felt was fair, there were 4 that were gut punches because they were people who should know better, who just went below the belt. And I'm being honest about this because if you want that over She-Hulk, why are you behaving this way? Why are you throwing the pain around? If you think it's so easy for creatives to just not react and not be petty, set an example of the behavior you want to see. I'm doing it. Is it easy? No. Is it worthwhile? Yeah. Is it consistent? You can't get good results expecting everybody else to be a bigger person than you are. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.